because you named all of those lawyers that we have now working in government, and we have 2 more lawyers here who want to continue working in government. I'm the only person that's not a lawyer running for governor. But let me add something. Mr. Humphrey, why, if you have all those qualified lawyers working in your office, are none of them capable of trying a tobacco case? If we're going to be farming cases out, then let's cut down the size of that Attorney General office. You know, it's like a city. If you have an engineering department, if you're going to go out and subcontract out to other engineers all the time, well, then you don't need a big engineering department as being part of government. Over 200 lawyers in that office up there, and none of them were capable of trying that case.
But my question really is, have the 3 of you looked at state agencies and said, this is where we can cut fat? Because it seems to me we have a lot of fat in state government, especially.
Let me respond, and I do have to respond. The fact is that the Attorney General's budget has grown about 3 times the rate of inflation of the last biennium. And Pat, you contrast that by what I've done in St. Paul. I mean, I've governed. I've cut the size. I've cut the size of government, Jesse, and I've governed. That's what I've done, and I've kept spending under the rate of inflation when I've governed, and neither of you have done that.
What about bonding?
I have done those things. We merged. Let me respond.
But Norm, what other agencies? What other agencies would you cut specifically?
Let me tell you how you do it, and then I'll give you 1 or 2 specifics. But you got to. How do you approach this? One, you do it like we've done in St. Paul. I consolidate.
To prep you all tonight for the debate.
So
between Kamala and Trump. That's right, it's tonight. Kamala and Trump. We flash back here in a time machine on Guardian of Chaos, the YouTube channel, on the great debate of 98.
Because it's unfair.
The great debate of 1998 for governor.
The state government, so it's unfair for you to attack them on that. But what I'm saying is, what agencies would you cut if you could be specific?
It is fair to look at the record. It is fair to look at the record of the mayor of St. Paul, who has cut taxes every year, who has kept spending under the rate of inflation, who shrunk the size of government except for adding cops. We've done that. And one of the ways, let me tell you, let me throw them out and see whether Skip will respond to this. One of the ways you cut the size of government, and I know Jesse will respond, I believe, the same way, is you use notions of competition. You see whether a service can be delivered more cost effectively on the private side.
Okay,
Skip, are you willing to consider competition?
I love this. This guy worked for me. This guy worked for me for 10 years. He supported all of what we did. When you were on our executive committee, I didn't hear any of these complaints, Norman. I didn't hear any kind of objections to what we were inviting.
Hello, excuse me. Can I just ask you? I just want to know specifically what agencies
major
would
agency
you
that we've
cut?
got to look at. The whole system of corrections.
The Met Council.
The whole system of corrections.
Are you willing to use competition and corrections?
We are going to take a look through a performance review council of every single agency. I'm the only candidate that has provided a specific dollar amount by what we're going to cut the budgets, and we are going to look particularly at corrections, and we are going to see, we don't need $80 a day cells. We don't need a Cadillac system. We can provide safety and we can find security in those areas for much less, and we're going to do it working
based on projected surplus.
It is, but it is.
Well, then how do you know? It's not based on any projected surpluses.
It's based upon what Arnie Carlson and his economics people say is there.
Ted Mondale said you had $1 billion hole in your budget. Ted Mondale said you had $1 billion hole.
Stop, and whoa, stop.
Don't talk $1 billion holes. How about $5 billion?
Okay, let's stop it right now. Let's stop it right now.
Spending $1 million.
This is priceless.
Okay, stop. Let's go to the Mall of Let's go to the Mall of America.
Council.
Go.
Yeah, my name is John Knight, and I'm from St. Louis Park. And when I went to Morehead State, I saw a lot of students working 3 jobs and having trouble making it through college. As governor, what will you do specifically to increase access to college for students who come from low-income families?
Well, there's already many loan programs and grant programs out there right now. I believe very strongly that if you're intelligent and you can survive and pass college, you can be intelligent enough to figure out your way to get through there. Nobody says you have to graduate in 4 years. Nobody says you can't go to the community college first, get your core classes done there much cheaper before you go to the bigger school later. And you can do what I did. when people say there's not a way to do it. You can do military service, which I did. My opponents never did. You then qualify for the GI Bill through your military service.
Vice President Walz, stolen valor.
We have about 7 or 8 minutes to go to the government program, by the
I'm
way,
just
which
saying,
is
man.
really well.
It's
And
my
I like
channel.
it.
If you don't
I
like
think
it, change
that's
the
good program.
channel.
But the way that you do it, and I'm the only candidate that will help.
I want to
this
prep
young
you
man
for the
to life
debate
on it.
tonight.
You are
Come on
absolutely
now.
right.
Take
You are
notes.
Absolutely right, Jesse. But the one way that we can help this young man is to make sure that we target a tax cut to help, in addition to the Hope scholarships that are in place, to make sure that we don't have an economic barrier for someone to go forward with their first 2 years. That's exactly what I have proposed. Up to $1,000 per year is going to be very helpful. That will cover almost all of those costs for very low income. Now, let me tell you what the problem is. If you don't do that, you bring upon the students some of the highest debt levels possible, and then you're trying to ask this individual to go out and make a living for themselves and the rest. That's a little bit like what Norm Coleman has been doing in his city. He indebts everybody up to the tune of $900 million that he's spending in debt and borrowing. You know, that's the problem.
Very quickly.
Two things, Skip. Thank goodness you're not running St. Paul, because there'd be no jobs, and we go back to when it was run by the DFL, by Jim Scheibel and Company. The city was dying, so we're doing well. Let me respond to the question. I do have people listening, because Skip's got another program. For every issue that's been raised, he's got a program, and as a result of that's going to both spend, and your taxes are going to be raised. And you got to listen to that, because in the end, it's another program. And the way you deal with the question raised by that young man is, one, first of all, you make sure mom and dad has a job. You do that by cutting tax, by promoting economic growth. That's what I've done. I'm the only one sitting there who's grown jobs. Secondly, what you do is you make sure when the federal government provides Pell Grants, and that program's been expanding, that the state keeps its share. That what we don't do is that we don't take the federal dollars and use the state dollars for more spending. And under Humphrey administration, you're going to see more spending. So make sure mom and dad has a job. Make sure the state doesn't cut the Pell Grant opportunities, and then do the things you can to keep tuition low. But you do that by promoting economic vitality and sound management, not by more programs.
We're running out of time,
It's
so I'm
not a
going to move
program,
on.
folks. I just want to make sure. What I talked about was a tax cut. Now I'm being attacked for cutting taxes.
Okay,
It's amazing what happens.
Time for a speed question. It's going to come from Colleen and Norm. Skip. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm told it's a regular question. Colleen, take it away.
Oh, we're going to do a regular
question.
Okay. It strikes me that we've become two very distinct states. The folks who live outstate have very specific concerns that those of us who live in a city cannot necessarily always relate to, and vice versa. When we're talking about building a stadium here in the Twin Cities, people in Brainerd or Hibbing may not care much about that. But when we talk about whether there ought to be a hunting season on Timberwolves or a moratorium on feedlot expansion, they care very deeply. How do you reconcile the two very distinct needs?
Well, first of all, high taxes and government regulation applies across the whole state, whether you live in southern Minnesota, the Iron Range, or the urban. Too much government, too much taxes, too much regulation applies to all of us. But we all have to, you're right, we have to become better acquainted with outstate, in-state, and work together. We are one state, the state of Minnesota. And I think one of the things that could accomplish that is unicameral legislation, because then everything will be debated on the floor. You won't have these conference committees where payback takes place and all of that stuff that goes on, where one person can be a dictator and kill a bill and never allow it to be debated on the floor, which is what you have now. You debate every bill on the floor. That makes every citizen of Minnesota more educated on the issues and able to understand the issues in different parts of the state.
Colleen, I do think that there are some fundamental
Meanwhile, here in 2024 in the state of Minnesota, that's why I chose to play these debates today.
We're concerned about
you have Tim Walz as the VP, a liberal radical, and then they vote in, the citizens vote in her district, someone like Omar. Let that sink in as I give my thoughts here on this. Omar in Minnesota and Tampon Tim in Minnesota. Look how different it was here in '98. Although still politicians, Jesse Ventura made sense. Look at where they are 30 years later. Tampon Tim and Omar, who married her brother, they've turned it into little Somalia. I'm just giving you my opinions here. Take notes.
Not only for ourselves, but for the future.
And that's probably the greatest challenge, Colleen, for the governor. It's pulling us all together. And in every coin in your pocket, there's the phrase, e pluribus unum, out of the many one. And that's really the mindset you have to have. And Jesse's right. You know, if you talk to any small businessman, whether they're in St. Paul, they're in Southwood, whether they're in Moorhead, they're in Mankato, they're in Worthington, they'll tell you the same thing. Farmers will tell you the same thing. Mayor, don't tax us to death. Don't regulate us to death. Make sure that our kids go to world-class, have world-class education. Make sure our streets are safe. And if you do that, we're going to do very, very well. In addition, then, you do look at some of the special opportunities. You look at the resources that we have in northern Minnesota, tourism as an example, and we make sure we have policies that promote the natural resources. We don't put bans on studs on snowmobiles. We should work with the industry to create the technology so we keep the tourists coming from Wisconsin. We don't do as Skip has proposed, put moratoriums on livestock. You kill the livestock industry, you kill the grain industry, you kill the food processing industry. So work with the resources, figure out a way to pull us all
30
together.
seconds to go. Last thoughts from both Skip Humphrey and Jesse Ventura.
My last thought is this. You know, a lot of these candidates tell you that your vote is wasted if you vote for Jesse Ventura. That is pompous and arrogant. It's your vote, and I want you to remember that the only wasted vote is not voting your conscience or your heart.
I just say this, that you need to be able to set priorities. You need to establish them. That's exactly what I've tried to do. I want to see those smaller class sizes. I want to see tax dollars returned to our families that are struggling with children in child care and senior citizens taking care. Those are the things that we need to be able to accomplish, and you need to do that by setting priorities.
We have run out of time, gentlemen. I'm sorry. It's been a fast hour. Thank you all. This was a great Minnesota Debate 98. Our thanks to the folks at KTCA, the best technical crew anywhere, Care 11 News, Channel 5.